My girlfriend of nearly 7 years confessed to me 5 days ago that she cheated on me 2 years into our relationship. I'm 28 and she's 26. We met on a dating app at Halloween night 2016. I had just turned 21 and had only been in one serious relationship until that point, which lasted 6 months and ended up with me being cheated on, but thankfully she confessed right away. I was definitely looking for a partner and talked to a variety of potentials, but we just clicked. We talked for about 2 weeks, mostly PG, but towards the end of it, it started getting sexual, and it was obvious there was attraction. Mid-November was the first time that we met. I drove 2 hours to hang out with her while her mom was away, and we hooked up. In the following weeks, she let me know that she would be moving an 8-hour drive away. We weren't official at this point, but I did feel strong emotions towards her, so I asked her to be mine the weekend that she moved away. For the next 2.5 years, we went back and forth visiting each other. I even hopped on a plane for the first time in my life just to go see her. We've lived together since the summer of 2019, and up until a few days ago, we were finally going to rent our own spot. I've never suspected that she could be unfaithful because of how she's shown genuine care and support for myself and my family. We've been together for some of the most memorable events of each other's lives: graduations, parents' weddings, vacations, and even adopted 2 cats a few months ago. The last 2 weeks have been especially fun since we started going out to places more. For the first time in years, I felt good about where I was in life, and I was super excited looking forward. Sunday morning was normal. She got up and went to church while I slept in. I got a call right around noon. She sounded distraught. "I really need to talk to you. Can you meet me in the car?" I figured maybe she had an argument with our friend she usually goes to church with, or some other issue not related to the relationship. When I went in her car, she was already sobbing. "I love you now more than ever," she said. I don't recall exactly how the words went, but she began explaining to me on Halloween night, 2018, she went out to an event with 2 of her coworkers, one guy and one girl. After the event was over, girlfriend dropped off the girl because her drop-off point was closest. Not sure at what point girlfriend decided to let the guy drive. Girlfriend claims that she was super tired by now and it was close to 2 in the morning. By the time she realized it, they were in a parking lot and she didn't know where they were. She explains to me how she never had any ideas about this guy or any attraction at all, but he was being really pushy about getting any action. Thinking about what happened next really messes with my head. He convinces her to make out, which she claims was disgusting, for I don't know how long, but once she tried to say enough, he kept pushing for more. Eventually, they hop in the back seat and the dirty deed is done. According to her, she started crying not too long after they started, and when the guy noticed, he stops. He grabbed her phone and blocks himself from her Snapchat. My girlfriend still worked there for a while, but she said that they had zero contact afterwards and would avoid him all the time after. The way I see it, she had so many options, but she chose to cheat on me with someone she wasn't even attracted to, out of pity and weakness to stand up for herself. Now, I do believe her when she said that it all came down to being pressured and confused. She's a super nice person, shy and reserved, and I could see how she could have been coerced back then. It still doesn't change the fact that it happened and I've been lied to for the past 5 years. Once it settled on Sunday night, we talked again, and it ended with me asking for space away from her, which she respected and stayed with her friend for the next 2 following nights. On Tuesday, we talked after work and decided to try to work through things. She moved back in that night, and every night since then, we've especially been on each other. I still feel that I love her, but there's something missing. It's definitely the trust, but maybe there's more than that. I've woken up from nightmares the past 2 nights. Rare for me to have nightmares, and they both included themes of being betrayed by her or being made to feel like I'm not enough. I'm struggling to choose where I go from here. I really wanted to work, but the trust is broken and I'm not sure if I'll ever get it back. I'm afraid staying with her will end up bad for both of us. Should I risk the pain of being hurt again or put myself through the pain of letting her go? I haven't told anyone about this, and I'd really appreciate some advice from someone who's been through similar situations or feels that they have something of value to say. Am I in the wrong for taking my grandchildren to Disney for the first time without their mother and refusing to apologize when confronted? I recently babysat my grandchildren, 5 and 4, for a period of 4 nights and 5 days so that my son and his wife could attend a wedding in Mexico and spend a few days on vacation. They approached me since their mother would not be available, and I initially said I wasn't comfortable with that. It seemed like a long time to watch kids, and she has point blank told me that the woman's family is more important than the man's, so I was irritated that I was being asked and not her mother. I'll admit that I did give in when my son became very emotional, but I feel like they were being manipulative. While I had the kids, I was invited to a birthday at Epcot and wanted to go. It didn't even occur to me to run it by my son or daughter-in-law, as I had the kids for an extended period of time, and obviously they knew they would be going where I went. My daughter-in-law had previously mentioned wanting to save up for Disney, but she said that about a lot of things and never made me aware it was something super special to her. Also, it was Epcot. It's not like I took them to Magic Kingdom and they had some magical moment of seeing their favorite character. When they returned and found out, my daughter-in-law was furious and burst into tears. She said that I stole one of her kids first and called me entitled. To be honest, I didn't react well to being called entitled when she was the one who had previously demanded babysitting. My son asked me to apologize as she was distraught over missing their first Disney trip, but I declined and asked him to leave. My son reached out again and said I should have asked for something that big, and his wife feels robbed. I know she's a huge Disney person, but it was Epcot, not quintessential Disney, and I don't feel like I should have had to miss out on a birthday party I wanted to attend. I told my son that I'm not apologizing for anything, and maybe they should think about how they made me feel when they didn't respect my initial no. So, am I in the wrong? Am I in the wrong for refusing to cover my scar and wearing a bikini as it triggered my friend? I, 24 female, had a cancer scare a few years back and had a biopsy done on my upper leg. The scar has faded now, but it's still fairly noticeable and about 7 centimeters long. Thankfully, it's only a scar and nothing came of it. For a while, I was insecure about it and stopped wearing skirts or tight leggings where you could see the outline of the scar. But now that I'm accepted it's going to be there, I started to wear whatever and realized that nobody cares about it apart from the odd question. We went to the beach yesterday as a friend group and I wore a bikini. I was excited to get a tan and my friend Anna brought her other friend, Dana, 25 female. I've met her before but I don't know her very well. However, I do know that she started a fundraiser for her mom who's fighting cancer right now. Dana's family situation is quite difficult as her dad passed away recently and her mom has stage 4 and Dana is juggling a lot. I came earlier than Anna and Dana and I was already in my bikini when they joined us, and Dana was nice to me and asked about my new job. Then Anna went to say hi to others and Dana mentioned my scar and recognized it was a biopsy. She asked if I could wear a beach cover-up and it was triggering her and insensitive of me as I know her mom is going through it right now. I said no, I'm here to get a tan and cover-up will ruin that, and Dana didn't say anything but didn't talk to me for the rest of the day. Today, Anna texted me telling me that Dana told her what happened, and while she agrees Dana's comment was weird, I should have just given her a free pass as she's not in the best place mentally right now. I said it was really weird and no I wouldn't. I genuinely don't think that I'm in the wrong and I think she's being really weird about the situation. Obviously if I'm in the wrong I'll apologize, but am I? Let's talk about the sadist of San Luis Obispo. After 2 college students are abducted and vanished without a trace or any leads, a parole officer pays a visit to a parolee that has a grisly criminal history. Out of more than 100 ex-cons in his caseload, David Zaragoza remembered that Rex Allen Krebs has a criminal history that is unlike any other. Specifically the violence against women, where 12 years earlier Krebs had broken into a Pismo Beach homes of 2 women repeatedly and terrorized them. In 1987, Shelley Crosby left a restaurant and walked past Krebs, who tried to get her attention. When she ignored him, he decided to follow her home in his Volkswagen. The 21-year-old divorced mother returned to an empty house as the kids were at the sitters and her roommate was gone until the next morning. He waited almost an hour for her to go to bed and then broke into her home. She woke up to his hand across her mouth and a weapon pressed against her throat. He tied her up and assaulted her repeatedly until he heard the muffler of her roommate's car coming home. Then he leaned over next to her and whispered, "Have a nice day," before fleeing the premises. 3 weeks later, he would strike again against a 31-year-old single mother asleep in her Pismo Beach home next to her 7-year-old daughter. She was awoken by a crash and found herself face to face with Krebs, who placed a screwdriver to the edge of her eye. Her daughter screamed, and Anishka Constantine offered him money, jewelry, whatever he wanted, but he said, "I want you." Anishka told her daughter to hide under the bed. She found a phone and attempted to call 911, but the phone was dead. When he was unzipping his pants, Anishka noticed that he had a knife at his waist. She asked him to go to another room, and as they were walking down the hallway, she managed to knock the knife out of his belt and onto the floor. They struggled and she attempted to stab him, but unfortunately, his belt buckle deflected it. Enraged, he repeatedly bashed her head into the wall, but despite her injuries, she was able to flee. She screamed for her neighbors, and Krebs fled the scene, leaving behind a brown corduroy snap brim hat, a buck knife, and a sheath. Both Anishka and her daughter positively identified him in a lineup, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison after agreeing to a plea bargain. He unfortunately only served 10 of those years and was let out on parole, which would be the biggest mistake as he would continue the rampage but in a deadly way. A year after Krebs was released, on the night of November 12, 1998, a college student named Rachel Newhouse was walking home when a stranger appeared wearing a skull-face Halloween mask. She tried to go around him, but he wouldn't let her, and then he started to beat her unconscious with his fists. Then he throws her into the back of his pickup truck, took her to a secluded canyon cabin where he assaulted her while wearing the mask. He then hogtied her and stuffed her underwear into her mouth. When he got back, she was dead. That's when he buries her body in a shallow grave. The next day, Rachel fails to show up to the brewery that she worked at, and her roommates called the police. The San Luis Obispo police didn't have much to go on, other than a bloodstain on the bridge which was tested and positively matched her DNA. There were no eyewitnesses at this time and no body, so the case stalled until his second victim. Crime Fanatic Friday Part 2, Sadist of San Luis Obispo. On March 11, 1999, just 5 months later in the same town, another young woman is abducted. Andrea Crawford was only 20 years old, and a couple weeks before her abduction, she had asked her neighbors if they'd seen a man creeping around in their shared backyard. According to her neighbors, Andrea wore strong glasses due to farsightedness. She couldn't see up close, which is relevant to the story. Rex Allen Krebs forced himself through her small window, even breaking 2 ribs to do so. Her bedroom was upstairs. In the dead of night, he crept up and pummeled her into insensibility. From there, he carried her to his truck, but stopped along the way to grab her keys as a trophy. And then he took her to the same cabin where he repeatedly assaulted and tortured her. During this, he was drinking heavily and continued to assault her through the remainder of the night. After he passed out, she attempted to escape and made it to the front door. However, due to her bad eyesight, she couldn't really see how to manipulate the locks. The noise unfortunately woke him up, and he grabbed her as she was moments from escaping. He murdered her and buried her in a shallow grave in the yard next to his previous victim. The next day, Andrea's mother couldn't get a hold of her and called the police. They dispatched police to search Andrea's duplex and found her purse inside her car, which remained in the driveway. At first, police announced that they didn't feel like the 2 missing women's cases were related, but Rachel's uncle, Peter Morial, who happened to be a DA in Riverside, went public and stressed the similarities between Andrea and Rachel. Both women were attending colleges nearby, both had similar physiques, and both disappeared without a trace. He felt that a serial killer was operating in the area. Krebs' parole officer, David Zaragoza, had the same hunch and decided to give Krebs a visit. He noticed that Krebs was in pain. He was wearing a weightlifter's belt and stated that he had injured himself by falling on a pile of wood. but Saragossa wasn't buying it and pushed the investigation. Karen Sandusky ran the Justice Department's sexual predator unit and gave Krebs a visit that night. During a search, they didn't find anything related to the missing girls, but they found BBs. Krebs admitted to keeping a BB gun at the lumberyard where he worked. Possession of any firearm, real or simulated, is a violation of parole. They staked his job the next morning, found the BB gun, and arrested him. Then they thoroughly searched his home, where they found Andrea's 8-ball keychain that Krebs had taken as a trophy. On April 22, 1999, he was questioned and waived his constitutional rights. They asked if he was responsible for the two women's disappearances, and he shook his head yes. He later showed investigators where he disposed of their bodies. He stated at one point, "If I'm not a monster, then what am I?" The jury answered this question after deliberating for 4 days during his trial and found him guilty on 11 counts. He was sentenced to death on May 11, 2001. He's on death row at California's San Quentin State Prison. A date has not been scheduled for his execution.
Am I wrong for kicking my sister out from every streaming platform I own because she kicked my dad from her Netflix? My 25 male mom passed away 4 years ago, and one of the things my dad clinged onto ever since was movies. They really enjoy doing it together, so I guess he took comfort on keeping the activity on his own. At the time, my sister, 32 female, got a 2-screen Netflix subscription and gave one to my dad so he could use it whenever he wanted. During those 4 years, I was able to get pretty much all of the rest, and since my sister was paying for my dad's Netflix, I thought I gave one of the screens to use, so no biggie. I've been out of town and I finally came back a week ago. I told my dad that we should see a movie together on Netflix or something, but he said that Netflix wasn't working. I found it odd, so I asked what he meant while taking his phone. He said that he asked my sister a few months ago, but she said that it wasn't working, so they'd wait for it to work. I only hummed and tried to log in again, but it didn't let me, so I called my sister asking for the password. She said she couldn't share the account anymore because now that they had my nephew, 2 male, they were using one of the screens for him and another for her husband. This enraged me. I asked her why she didn't tell us before and why did she lie to my dad. She said she didn't have the heart to tell him, and I said, "But you have the heart to lie to him, don't you?" And I hung up. Since then, I've gotten my dad a new Netflix account and I've changed all of the passwords so only my dad and I have them. 2 days ago, my sister called saying that my brother-in-law wanted to watch Game of Thrones, but the account kicked him out, and I told her, yeah, it was me. She flipped and asked for the password because they can't afford it on their own, and I said, well, I didn't have the heart to tell you, and I hung up the phone again. My brother-in-law texted me calling me petty and an asshole. My dad's oblivious to all of this. My sister called again and asked for the passwords for one of the platforms. You know, the children-friendly one. Because my nephew wants to see Encanto, and I said she has to apologize to my dad first, at least, and she said my nephew's discomfort is on me. Am I wrong for telling my son that his brother is just better at life than him? I, 50 mil, have 2 sons, Daniel, 22, and Jackson, 20. We have our fair share of problems, but I love both of them with all of my heart no matter what. Doesn't sound like it from the title, but you know. Even as a child, Daniel always had a superiority complex. He always felt the need to excel at everything except for sports due to asthma. He started law school this year and I'm very proud of him. Jackson, on the other hand, is just a natural. There's no other way to put it. He doesn't need to put much effort into anything, yet he still comes out on top. After graduating from high school, he started working for me at my business, which is flourishing thanks in large part to Jack. A year ago, Jackson met his now fiancé and we're preparing for the wedding this summer. Everyone in our family is happy for them except for Daniel. Daniel and Jack get along rather well. There's no feud between them, but I could always tell that Daniel had always been jealous of Jack. So I went on a business trip last weekend to where Daniel goes to school, and of course I met up with him. He was quite cold to me the whole time, not like he usually is. After a while, I asked him what was wrong, and he told me that he hasn't taken it lightly that my wife and I are going to pay for Jack's wedding and that we are going to help them out with buying their house as well. I was taken aback. I told him that his mother and I will do the same thing for him as well when it's time to get married. Daniel told me that it is disgusting that we're paying for the wedding but not for his tuition. I told him that it was his decision to go to an Ivy League school and an even more expensive law school, not ours. He accused me of favoring Jack, but I was having none of it. I told Daniel that he should get past that Jack is naturally more apt to life than he is, and frankly, he should be thinking about settling down as he keeps jumping from relationship to relationship. Daniel had a lot of girlfriends, but none of them lasted longer than half a year. He said that I've just admitted to preferring his brother. I couldn't take it anymore. I told my son to calm down. Think about how silly he's behaving, and I'll pay for his ticket if he wants to come down south for dinner on the weekend, and left. It was hard, but he needs to start accepting reality. He's becoming rather self-centered. I don't want to lose him, but I feel like he keeps pushing us away from him. It's not healthy. I told my sister about it. She's also Daniel's godmother, and she thinks I'm an asshole for talking to Daniel like that. Honestly, the only thing that might have made me the asshole is that I told him Jack is simply a natural, which he might have taken the wrong way, but he needed to hear that. So, am I the asshole?